Hej skat. Hej lille skat. Ja, du er mors piger. They know how long time you are on the toilet. They know how you get out of your house. If I were just single, they would know whether I had a lover or not. Yeah, when you are in the digital system, when you need to get social benefits, pension or kontanthjælp or anything else, you give up your privacy, and it's the acceptance you need to have in order to get into the system. I have a disease called adrenoleukodystrophy, which means that all my central nervous system will degenerate. And then I have sclerosis and as a side effect, and also I have a spine arthritis as well. I have personal assistants 24 hours a day because without them, I wouldn't be able to do anything.
Denmark is known for having a trustworthy and generous welfare state, with the government spending roughly a quarter of its annual budget on social benefit schemes. But there is a darker side to Denmark's welfare system for people who aren't considered part of the country's mainstream. Amnesty International's latest investigation has found that the Danish welfare authority, Udbetaling Danmark, uses an array of invasive surveillance tools and AI-powered technology, such as fraud algorithms, to control and regulate the distribution of benefits.
Udbetaling Danmark, basically what they're doing is they are a machine bureaucracy. So what they do is they pay people money and look at it as an entirely administrative affair. And in that context, data is very important. Data is basically all they got. They don't have any insight into the individuals or their situation or the context, their lives. And they don't find it necessary because that's not what they're there for.
Udbetaling Denmark was established in 2012. Although its core function was to streamline welfare payments, Amnesty International's research has found surveillance and discriminatory attitudes are rooted at the very foundation of Udbetaling Denmark's use of algorithms.
The purpose of setting up Udbetaling Denmark was to streamline the distribution of benefits, social benefits. And Udbetaling Denmark has power under law to use fraud control algorithms to make decisions on the distribution of benefits and particularly to detect benefit fraud. As a result of the power that it has under law, Udbetaling Denmark has power to extract and merge large amounts of sensitive personal data of social benefits recipients and members of their household, data from public and private databases, and to use this data on the algorithms that it creates in order to determine who's committing benefit fraud.
The design choices behind the technologies used in the system risk worsening discrimination against marginalized groups, deepening inequalities. Those impacted are mainly racialized groups, migrants, refugees or asylum seekers, and people with disabilities.
Yeah, Denmark has become a surveillance country, actually, I would feel like, because in Denmark we do survey a lot of people without even asking them, because I am not asked whether they can surveil me. They just do it.
As of 2019, Udbetaling Denmark was deploying up to 60 algorithmic models, many of them to detect benefits fraud. Amnesty International gained partial access to 4 of them.
When we look at a model like the model abroad, I think there is a much more clear-cut design kind of function of the model, in that it is specifically looking at people's ties to countries, in particular outside of the European Economic Area. So there is an inherent kind of targeting involved in that kind of, in the design of that model, ethnic background of individuals, when you're specifically looking for countries that are outside of the EEA.
Another model that Amnesty International analysed uses diverse data inputs to determine an individual's true relationship status. The aim? To detect whether individuals are really single and entitled to the supplementary pension and childcare benefits that come with this.
That model in particular is built from using a machine learning algorithm or technique known as anomaly detection, which statistically speaking is trying to identify statistical outliers in the data. So that is people who are receiving welfare who, according to this set of data or inputs that are included within the model, sufficiently deviate from what is considered normal. I think the best way to say it is they don't necessarily fit the norm within Denmark.
There's been this discussion that non-Westerners have more children. And should we as politicians, as the government, put a limitation on how many children are allowed to get child benefit? And that whole debate was constructed around the idea that came out from Denmark's statistics that non-Westerners have and immigrants have on average more children than ethnic Danes. So this idea that after the 3rd child, you don't get any more child benefits because we don't want families to live off of their child benefits if they have 4 more children. So this whole notion of living off of child benefits is connected to the racialization of immigrants and refugees. So large households is also about the nuclear family, but with a lot of children, and then potentially getting more children to getting more benefits.
Denmark's hostile attitude towards migrants is also evident in attitudes towards so-called parallel societies. Discourse and political opinion towards parallel societies and migrants, especially regarding welfare, are often accompanied by restrictive and discriminatory laws and policies targeting refugees and migrants. One such example is the formerly known as ghetto law, established in 2019. The public officials behind these policies believe that these neighborhoods harbor migrants who do not participate in wider society or learn Danish, even as they benefit from the country's generous welfare system. People living in neighborhoods with high concentrations of social housing and with high numbers of non-Western migrants and refugees have also been subjected to increased monitoring and surveillance after the ghetto laws were introduced. Nationwide, tenants can be mass evicted in order to get rid of problematic parallel societies. This tenant refuses to leave and is now the only tenant still living in his building.
Og så nogle tyrker, og så her nogle palæstinenser, og så her også palæstinenser fra Libanon. Nu er det kun mig, der bor her.
So it affects everybody in those areas. They don't get the same sentence for the same crime If they committed this crime outside of this area, they would get the normal sentence. If they committed within this area or close to the area and they live here, they will get a double sentence. It's mandatory to send your children to daycare after the age of 1, which is not mandatory for anybody else. It's a choice. It's an offer. So it affects people in negative ways, of course, and it's clearly the laws themselves are discriminating.
And I think one of the interesting things about Denmark, for example, with the ghetto policy and let's say the definition of non-Western, is generational. So it's not as though I could be born in Denmark and then I'm considered Western. It's going to go across maybe 1 or 2 generations. So how long will it take? Will that be enough? The case of Denmark is especially interesting because, in a sense, just living there and having a CPR number already makes you hypervisible as it is. So you can't do anything without your CPR. You can't really get a job. You can't, pay taxes, access to health, etc. So you're already incredibly visible to the state as it is through this number alone. So then you add in this added forms of surveillance, of being visible, maybe hypervisible even.
Der har været en sauna her. Det har lavet til, der var en, der bokser i boligforening, og han var i højt niveau. Og så havde de lavet det her sauna til ham. Jeg ved ikke, hvad de laver. Det var den væg her. Den her, det var væg her. Der har været sauna med det her. Du ved godt, der er 3 trapper. Det er ikke så godt. Det er sådan en god ting, man kan bruge det. Ja. Men ja, det skal det hele fjernes nu. Det er mærkeligt, fordi de siger, fordi der er mere end 50% udlænding. Selvom der er mere end 80% af dem, der bor her, de har danske statsborgerskab. Men de betragter det stadigvæk som udlænding, selvom de har danske statsborgerskab. Det er det, der er problemet, at vi bliver aldrig betragtet som danskere.
What is unique about the Danish context is that a very good portion of the Danish population live in common housing. There are more residents who use social benefits or in need of social benefits. So every year they're kind of developing the policy a little bit more. And last year they started opening up this idea of not just surveillance of public spaces in these housing areas, but also going into surveillance of people who live in these areas and having municipalities speak to police, as well as the tax office. So several authorities speaking together.
The issues surrounding ethnic profiling and discriminatory algorithmic models are not new in Denmark. In 2019, a scandal erupted in the country when it was discovered that Danish job centres were using ethnic profiling as a direct parameter to flag applicants for long-term unemployment. This was brought to light because of the research of this woman. She was born and raised in Denmark, got her university degree and registered at the job centre. There, she had her first encounter with ethnic profiling.
I was classified as high risk to be long time unemployed. It turns out the outcome of the algorithm was fully due to my parents coming from a non-Western country. It was the first time that people in Denmark started to talk about mass surveillance and algorithms.
In Denmark, we are very quick to say that everybody is equal and we work towards equality for everybody. But when we are seeing these specific targeting of groups and specific ways of profiling based on ethnicity, it makes you wonder if we are equal.
It made me think about others that get minus points this way. People who are made suspicious without even knowing. So I started to engage in the public debate about mass surveillance and prejudice. I kind of get annoyed when I read in the news that, oh, these algorithms, they are evil, or these algorithms, they are racist, biased. But it's not the algorithms, they don't create themselves. It's people who are creating the algorithms and they are biased. So maybe we should think more about how is it that we bring our own biases into creating these algorithms.
The system has taken over, and I think it's awful that we are so many in the population in Denmark that have this surveillance over us. It goes over the personal limit, I would think so. And is it really necessary? Is it necessary to surveil so many people?
There are concerns that the extraction of large amounts of personal sensitive data by Udbetaling Danmark creates opportunities for the violations of people's privacy, and also creates opportunities for people to be surveilled and categorized into groups in ways that would allow for discrimination of these groups as a result of being labeled as different or others, creating spaces for violations of human rights.
This journalist recently exposed that Danish tax authorities are able to use geolocation data to track individuals' movements. When he asked the authorities for more details, they provided him with heavily redacted documents.
So, the entire purpose blacked out, data types blacked out, entire purpose blacked out, data types blacked out. Physically, you can see that this is blacked out, what is going on. The opposite of a system that can be relied upon. The government has almost endless possibilities legally to obtain data. They're not limited to the data that a government would normally collect. They can, if they want, buy people's data from data brokers, or go and look at Facebook, or take them from Amazon, or whatever their imagination will take them. So, and we don't know what they're doing. Now they have said they don't do any of that, but they do have the legal authority to do so.
Yeah. It's the same picture. They have put it in the frame. That's from the newspaper. They cut it out and put it into the frame. They both say that they were very proud when they saw me in the newspaper, because they knew that I was probably saying something that was true and right, but they couldn't read it. So I helped them translating it and read it for them.
Ja, det er vores hjem faktisk, ja. Det er en racistisk lov, og det er en forkert lov. Det er derfor så er der beviser på, at den er imod danske lov, og så imod EU's regler og lov. Det er derfor så har vi store håb på at vinde sagen. Ja, og vi tror på, at vi vinder sagen.
Measuring welfare fraud is challenging, raising questions about whether constant mass surveillance is necessary, or if less intrusive methods can be used to assess fraud risks. Denmark's social benefits system operates in a hostile environment for migrants and refugees, encouraging discrimination based on race, ethnicity, migration status, and disability. These biases are embedded in algorithms reinforcing divisions and otherness. Currently, Udbetaling Denmark does not systematically or sufficiently check that their algorithms are not discriminatory, which demonstrates a clear lack of oversight. They have a responsibility to clearly explain to the public what they are doing and to allow their approaches to be scrutinized.
I think we should stop up and ask ourselves whether it has a purpose, a right purpose, and what we do want the purpose to be. I'm not sure we are asking ourselves those questions.